Sup? If you see any smoke wafting in, the house is not on fire. I've got incense on and the window is closed so you don't hear cars. Welcome to my big guide, comprehensive, not really, brief guide for meltdowns. Official title. I've put together a little list of things not to do and to do if you are friends with an autistic person and want to help them when they have meltdowns. They're really not fun, and there's a hair on my camera. It can be super hard to calm yourself down when you're in them, so I thought it could be good to put together a list and give you some ideas of things you can talk about when your autistic friend is in a good place, and you can make a plan for how to help them when they're in these kinds of situations. Firstly, identifying a meltdown. What is it? Why does it happen? Obviously noticing warning signs and preventing a meltdown is the ideal situation, but if you start to notice some of these things, it could be happening already or on the way to happening, and this is how you know. It will look different for absolutely everyone that experiences them, but it could be things like screaming, crying, pacing, scrunching the eyes shut, confusion, hyperventilation, withdrawal, yelling, maybe some stimming that is harmful to themselves, or any other number of things. It's not attention seeking, it's not a tantrum, and it doesn't always look like the typical screaming and crying that you might think. Any autistic person can experience them despite their typical perceived support needs. They can happen when there's a disruption to our routine, when we're over or understimulated, when we're overwhelmed by stress. Typically there are triggers that are individual to every person, so it's good to ask them if they are aware of what they are, or maybe try and work it out together. Some people do little meltdown trackers so they can kind of find the common denominators and then rule them out and they know for future. I personally have no fucking clue. Here's what not to do. Here's what's probably really unhelpful. Bombarding them with information and choices. I find it really hard to think when I'm having a meltdown and communicate my needs back. It's good to ask about preferences when they're in a good place because they can think about it objectively and not whilst they're overwhelmed by those feelings. If you're giving them choices and trying to be helpful, even though it's got good intentions, it's sometimes really hard to understand what you want in that moment and to be able to communicate that back. Don't get angry or raise your voice. Stay calm because we need that. We need you to help us. Don't ignore it. It's not going to just go away if you pretend you don't see it. If the environment is triggering or if there is a specific trigger that you are aware of, don't force us to endure it. It won't just stop. Don't withhold comfort objects and don't tell us to just stop it because believe me, we would if we could. So what can you do? Leave the environment or get rid of the trigger if you can. Sometimes it might not be possible, it might be something that is completely avoidable, but if you're in a situation where it's overwhelming and you can identify maybe there's sensory triggers, then leave. Even if you're not sure what the trigger is specifically, getting away from whatever environment you're currently in, switching it up and getting into a comfortable, safe environment is often really helpful. Noise cancelling headphones or earplugs, things like loops, can be really good for when things are overwhelming, particularly with noise, although I often find them helpful no matter what the cause of the meltdown is. I've got these headphones, they go with me everywhere, I love them so much. They're noise cancelling and I don't always have music on when I've got them on, sometimes it just has their ambient noise thing. It sort of muffles sounds around me whether I have music on or not, but I also have a playlist that I put on. Music can be really good. I have a specific playlist for when I have meltdowns that has got music in it that makes me feel happy, encouraging, like positive stims, non-harmful stims. There's lots of musical stuff in it, things with lots of harmonies and layers, and they all just feel fizzy, give me goosebumps, or things that I really like to sing along with and get lots of that energy out. Often meltdowns feel like you are shaking up like a bottle of Coke and it's going to explode, so finding ways of getting that energy out in a healthy way is really helpful for like getting you to feel better. I also have loops for when I need to be seen like I'm listening. When I have these headphones on, I can make it so that I can still hear you, but often people perceive it as being rude and they shouldn't, and I should learn to stick up for myself a little bit more and just wear it, but sometimes I can't. I feel nervous, like people are going to think I'm just being rude, so loops are what I use in that case. I just pop them in and they sort of muffle background noise. I can still hear people talking, I can still hear myself talking, but it just makes everything less spiky. It's more, sounds are like this instead. I find them really helpful for when I'm in a busy environment like restaurants and cafes. They are awesome. They're a little bit of an investment, as are noise cancelling headphones, but I really recommend them. Another good thing to encourage and offer to them are stim toys, or just healthy forms of stimming, because often we can resort to harmful stims. It's not intentional, the energy's just got to come out of us somewhere, and so people will often hit themselves or do any other kind of harmful things. I have a funky little meltdown box which has got things in it that help me, and it could be a good idea to make this kind of thing with an autistic person. In the case of meltdowns, they can come in very handy. I have a bunch of stuff for stimming in here, and they are so helpful when I'm having a meltdown, and if you know that your friend has a box like this ready, it can be really good just to be able to plonk it in front of them, help them get into a safe little space and stim in a positive way. Distractions are also really good, having something that they can watch or focus their mind on if they're able to do that. So for example, in my box I have this book of railway puzzles, and this is good if I sort of feel a meltdown coming on but I'm not fully in it yet, because it's just something for my brain to focus on and it stops me from spiraling more. But if you're already in the meltdown, it can be hard to focus on something like that, so simpler activities are sometimes cool. I have a couple of little activity books, and they're just simple like colouring things. I also like to watch something on YouTube, something chill, just easy watching, so it can be good to know what they like to be able to put it on ready for them, because sometimes it's hard to make those decisions for yourself. For example, when I start to show signs of having a meltdown, my girlfriend often plonks me on the bed, gives me a nice blanket, a stim toy, and puts Plumbella on. Having a little routine like this established is really cool. There's a bird. It means that you can just get things sorted as quickly as possible and to something. Reassurance is also really good, because something that comes with meltdowns is embarrassment. It can be really vulnerable to be like that in front of someone, so if you can reassure them that it's okay, you are there for them, it will mean the world. In terms of physical touch, it's completely up to the person in that moment and just in general what their preferences are. Some people really like pressure if they have a weighted blanket or giving them a firm hug. Some autistic people prefer no contact at all or light contact. It's good to give them the choice in that moment, even if they typically have a preference, because it can be very different from day to day and from meltdown to meltdown. Along those lines, when it comes to choices, it's sometimes really difficult to communicate their needs. So there are a few different things that you can do here, but generally not bombarding them with lots of different options, and definitely not open-ended questions. Sometimes when I'm struggling to communicate, I find it easier to offer options on two hands. So for example, someone could say to me, do you want the telly on, or do you want to listen to some music? And then I could touch their hand, point to the hand, and it's just easier to do. Alternatively, things like communication cards are a really great way of getting your preferences. Sometimes we don't know what we need as well, so having some options that we can flick through can be really good. Accommodating sensory preferences is also really cool. I find that if I am having a meltdown and I get a good smell on, I typically get to calm down a lot easier. I put a few drops in an oil diffuser, or I put some incense on, or I have a bunch of oils which I can just rub on my wrist, and I find it really helpful just to like sniff. I also have pillow spray which I put on in my bed if I'm just like cozying up and getting calm. Essentially, it's important to remember that everyone is unique, everyone is individual, and it's important to speak to the autistic person that you're trying to help when they're in a good place and find out their preferences and make a sort of plan for what happens when they do have a meltdown. Having a meltdown is a feeling internally, and the behaviours you see are a result of not being in control of those feelings. It feels like the worst thing that can possibly happen at that time. It feels like you're in danger, it's not going to end. Often it feels like you literally could die. Reassuring us that it's okay, that you're here, we're not overacting, you're not going anywhere. It's important to hear and remember that meltdowns always end. It won't feel like this forever, and hopefully with some of these things that I've suggested today, it will stop feeling like this a lot sooner. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two, and if not, why are you even listening? I've also just noticed I've got this Hey Dougie chocolate cupcake kit that I've had in here. This has been a preventative measure in this box for a while now, and it goes out of date in a couple of months, so I should probably do this soon. Thank you for watching. D's and do's, subscribe. Bye!